Hi everyone, welcome back to the 21 and Sensory podcast with me, Emily. I'm really excited to chat to today's special guest, Kay Wilson. Kay is a Nottingham-based illustrator, most well known for her cover of the best-selling book A Kind of Spark, as well as the covers for Keedie, Like a Charm and Like a Cursed, all by the lovely Elle McNicoll. Kay has also worked on a wide range of projects from editorial illustration to podcast art. So, Kay, would you like to say hello?
Hi, I'm Kay. It's lovely to meet you, Emily, and be on the show. But yeah, I think you pretty much covered everything in your intro, to be honest. But yeah, I'm Kay. I'm from Nottingham. I have ADHD, and I'm an illustrator.
Amazing. And you have illustrated some very, very interesting books. So we'll have to talk about that in a little bit.
Yes.
But let's start with the diagnoses. Let's start with ADHD because yeah, it's great to hear a neurodivergent illustrator working with a neurodivergent author on a neurodivergent book. Like it's all the stars seem to have aligned there. But it'd be really interesting to hear the background to finding this out about yourself, if that's okay.
Yes. Yeah, I would love to chat about that. So actually, the first thing I was actually diagnosed with at 18 was dyslexia. That was the first thing that got flagged up there. I think that was flagged up to my mum when I was like in year two. And then it became this weird thing of like me probably having it, but then not really being like an avenue for diagnosis when I was at school. There was actually a point I was suspected of having dyspraxia, and that has actually never been diagnosed. I thought I had a diagnosis for it, and then found out recently that I don't. I did
Okay.
some crazy like exercise stuff when I was younger that was like trying to improve coordination to like improve spelling. Didn't work. But yeah, like I was diagnosed with ADHD at age 22. So for reference, I'm 30 now. So that was 8 years ago.
Okay. Right. That's really interesting. Like the fact that the kind of dyslexia was picked up like very early, but in terms of ADHD, very kind of like late diagnosed. Like
Yeah.
how does that kind of do you think anyone ever had an inkling about ADHD and you or not
So
really?
interestingly, like the thing that would come up on my school reports would be like the space cadet stuff of like, she's like not really applying herself, or her like head's in the clouds, like she's not in the room focusing with us. That was the sort of thing that got written down on like my school reports a lot, like having a lot of potential, I guess, and
Mhm.
then not living up to it, and just being quite scatterbrained. Nobody actually put like the thought of ADHD into my head until I was actually it was actually like a really terrible flatmate I had. And this is like one of the only nice things I think he ever did for anyone in the long term. Um, but he basically, one time I remember I was really like frustrated. This would have been about when I was like, I want to say I would have been 19 at this point. And I remember I had this rant to him, and I was just like, I just feel like everyone has this source of willpower that they can draw into that I don't have. Like, I have so many things that I desperately want to do and I physically can't. And it seems like there's this complete disconnect between me and other people. So if other people want to do something, a lot of the time they just kind of do it. It's like stuff that's like
Mm.
even enjoyable things that, you know, are just for fun. I was like, I have like no, like none of this like willpower to even do it. And I just went on about it for like maybe like 20 minutes nonstop at him, which is also potentially a little bit of a sign. And I remember there was like a really long pause after I finally finished, and he just turned around and he was like, "Okay, do you think you might have ADHD?" Um, and I remember I was just like, no, and got really offended and like left the room. And then it was about 2 months later, I think, the thought came back into my head. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I should actually look into this, see what it's actually all about. And I remember I went on the ADHD subreddit and I sorted the posts by top posts. And I remember I like read through all of them and I just started crying because I was like, I could have written every single one of those posts on
Mhm.
that. I was just like, this is just so many like little weird things in my life just suddenly all got connected all at once. And it was really overwhelming. And at that time, that would have been like, I want to say 2013. Yes,
Okay.
2013. So it was kind of a little bit before as well. We were sort of, I think it's been really fantastic over the last few years. We're having a lot more like public discussion about neurodiversities. At that point, it was really like, this is the boisterous, like, boys condition. And also, like, I don't know, it felt a bit like shameful. I don't know, it was like there was a lot of like shame about it as well.
Mhm.
So I remember feeling like very resistant to it, but then just being so overwhelmed by all of these stories, and particularly like hearing stories with like from women with ADHD as well, and being like, oh, I'm now starting to see myself in ways that I kind of hadn't before.
Mhm.
Yeah, that would have been like the first realization. So that was like 19, and then it was 3 more years for me to actually get diagnosed. So, which was like a little bit of another saga that I can talk about as well.
Oh, we
um,
love a diagnostic process saga like on this podcast because it seems like everyone has had one, unfortunately.
yeah, it's a real
Um,
shame because it's like, I wish I could be on here and be like, yeah, it's easy, guys. Please just, get it, sort your life out. Please do. But like, it is. I mean, I don't know. Hopefully it's better now than it was when I was doing first went through it. But
mhm.
I went through the NHS first, and I remember having a particularly bad appointment with an NHS specialist who absolutely did not want to diagnose me and really wanted to imply that I was trying to like procure drugs off her, which
What?
was not a good experience.
Jeez.
It was pretty horrible, and I remember that was just um, it was so bad that I remember I like told my mum about it, and she was a bit on the fence about like she was kind of like, okay, we'll see how this goes, and then immediately she was like, okay, I think we should go private. I don't think that was fair what happened. But it was
Mm.
a really funny situation, because I remember this practitioner was very convinced that I was like trying to dupe her, until I mentioned the fact that my two younger brothers, like one of them was also looking into an ADHD diagnosis, and the other one had been actually, he never hasn't been diagnosed, but he was flagged up at school for being a bit more like I guess like hyperactive.
Mhm.
um and if you kind of the anything with ADHD is very genetic, and that like she almost immediately kind of backed off, like she wouldn't do anything to diagnose me, but she sort of like dropped it a little bit, and then was just kind of like, okay, well, bye, basically. So
Right.
it was just, yeah, it was not a
Wow.
great situation. It feels weird to talk about it publicly, actually. I don't think I've ever mentioned that publicly before, but I really hope that that's not the case in that like other people haven't had that experience, and that was just like a particularly bad one. I think where I'd gone, they'd done other mental health care, and it had been a bit like questionable for other people we knew. So I
Mhm.
wound up going private after that. I went via, I think I did actually go via like the Priory, which they normally do. If you've heard of the Priory, you've probably heard them for like addiction recovery services and things. The one I did also did like ADHD stuff. So I had the full bells and whistles, like 4 hour like appointment with a psychiatrist that like literally like leafs through absolutely everything,
Mhm.
um and like loads of like medical history, and then was like, yep, pretty certain this is the thing, was more than happy to diagnose me. And then when I actually moved to Nottingham, and I'd had a break from medication, and I was like, I want to go back on it and try a different strand. There wasn't a Priory service here that I can access, and if people aren't aware, if you get diagnosed privately, you have to stay with the same provider. If you go to a new one, you have to be re-diagnosed. So I wound up going to ADHD 360 just because they're online based. So it's like, if I ever move again, I'm not going to have this issue because they can service the whole of the UK.
Oh,
And then
okay.
I had So I had to go through the
Oh my God.
diagnostic system again and get re-diagnosed. So I can now at least be like, well, I've been diagnosed with ADHD twice, just because of like needs must. Because they just, it's annoying to have to do it again, but that's just how the system is. It's funny. Like I feel like it's really common for like people before they get like a neurodivergent like diagnosis, and I definitely was kind of like this the first time of like, oh, but what if it is like, if I'm making it up and it's all in my head, or like maybe I'm overthinking stuff. I think by this time, if I went for like a third diagnosis, I'd just be like, yeah, I've got this. Please. I'm so tired.
You've
Just
got
do
all
it
the
again.
paperwork to show
I
them.
know.
Like, look.
Do you want to read this stack of report? Like, you can just have it, please. Like, just leaf through it. I don't want to speak. I don't want to say anything, except for I will,
No.
because I won't stop talking. But
That
yeah.
is mad, isn't it? And am I right in thinking like the NHS won't like they won't add it to your record if you've had it done privately as well? Like I've heard people having to fight to kind of have it on their NHS record, like to be recognised.
Ooh, that's interesting. Do you know what? I know there's, so I've actually, you just said that and I was like, I have no idea if it's on my record. I
Mm.
know I'm on, so I've transferred onto shared care, so I get my medication now via the NHS.
Mhm.
I think that hopefully that means it's on its record, but that is, I have, yeah, there is a thing where it's like, to get that shared care at least. Some
Mhm.
GPs are really, really good. My GP is fantastic. I'm really, really lucky with them. I have heard like other GPs that are very, very resistant to it. I think it comes down to a lot of stuff of like how it's run and how they see like referrals and things. Probably a lot of internal NHS stuff that I'm not privy to, but I have heard people at least having problems with shared care. So it wouldn't
Mhm.
surprise me if there's also a medical records thing. And that might
Yeah.
actually be something I have to check after this recording.
Sorry, I'm gonna go make you check your paperwork. And
Yeah,
it's
well, it's
mad,
good to
isn't
do
it? Yeah,
it.
true. I think like it's mad that you had to, you had to kind of prove yourself, and then the fact that you kind of mentioned, your two brothers, and then she kind of backed off a bit in your kind of initial appointment. It's mad that you know they want to hear all that kind of potential evidence and won't just listen to you as an individual kind of thing. Like, it must be frustrating.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And I felt like, I remember at the time feeling like I was in an impossible situation, because she was just here, like, you're just here to, like, get access to this medication to abuse it. And then
Mm.
I was like, no, no, what I want is like something to help me. Like, I'm willing to try medication to see if it works for me, but I want a diagnosis and solutions and like tools in my toolbox so I can use. But then if someone's like really convinced that like you're trying to get medication off them to abuse it, you're just going around in an insane circle, and you're like, well, I can't possibly prove this to you.
Yeah.
There was genuinely like a point where I wanted to be like, look, if someone really did want to get like prescription drugs to abuse them, there are easier ways than this to do it, to be
Oh,
completely honest with you.
definitely. If anything, that would be the longest winded. It took you 3 years to get to the stage of
Yeah.
being diagnosed and stuff. Like, do they really think that's the way to it? That's
No, but then
mad.
it's also like, then you're like, but if I say that, they're
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
like, wow,
Even more suspicious.
that's
You're like,
interesting that you're gonna say that.
you can't win, can you?
No, truly, it really did feel like a bit of a lose-lose. But, ultimately, I got the diagnosis. I would then be like, it can be quite, I guess there's a lot of like, there's very long wait times at the moment. I think,
Mm.
particularly even now for private services, they're going like, there's even a bit of delay on them. So I would say like, stick to it. See, like, if you potentially feel like you've been treated unfairly, look for a second opinion. So I can now be like, at least, the majority of ADHD diagnoses that I've had have been that I have it. So,
Yeah. Honestly, just it is madness, isn't it? But it is worth doing. And do you feel like you had almost like a sense of kind of closure or like affirmation having been told that you are ADHD? Like, did you get that sense of any of that? I kind of felt like after getting my autism diagnosis, when I walked out, that like the world was sort of gonna be changed, and like
Mm.
spoilers, it wasn't. But I kind of like, I don't know if you felt like, like I finally know this about myself, like everything's gonna change. How did you feel,
Yeah.
basically?
I think the first word that came to my mind was relieved.
Hmm.
I think that's probably like, I'd imagine I'm not the only one that feels that way, but
Mm.
I think relieved. I think there was particularly going through like such a like bad first experience when I was like, no, I am gonna go for a second opinion, just both on the recommendation of my like both my mum was like we should do this, and then also when I spoke to my GP about it, she was like, yeah, we'll privately refer you, that's fine.
Hmm.
But it yeah, I think after having that experience, and even though I was like, I'm reading people's stories and I'm just seeing everything that's aligned with them, I'm looking at all of these symptoms and I'm checking all of these boxes, I'm seeing all of these like um people talking about how they were when they were younger, etc., etc., and it's all like aligning.
Hmm.
It's still like it's quite a inherently stressful process anyway, because you're really being scrutinized and you do have the little thought in the back of your head, you're like, maybe like this isn't right and true. So when it came out, then when I had the full proper like 4 hour like assessment and they were like, yep, feel very confident in it, it just felt like a massive weight off my shoulders. I
Hmm.
think it is also though like you are right in a sense that you're like, yeah, this is like the next page of my life and it's all going to be good, and then someone turns around to you and they're like, oh, what are your support needs? And you're just like, what do you mean support needs? I've been hiding this my whole life. Like, I don't know what helps me because I've been running away from it because I felt like this is bad. Like, I
Mm.
need to learn how to be like organized in a way that everyone else does. Like, I've never been in tune with how my brain works. And that was a whole, I think, learning process afterwards. And it's something I'm still kind of trying to figure out to this day is like, um, what actually just works for me. Like, how do I want to like I guess move through the world in a way that helps me, rather than something like there's sometimes a thing where like you can, I don't know if this makes sense, you can kind of be given a tool and rather than it be useful you can sort of use it to beat yourself over the head with it. So like if someone's like, this is an
Yeah.
amazing like to-do list system, and then it doesn't work for you, I think there's a real, particularly if you're neurodiverse and you're very used to doing something in like a
Mm.
wrong or incorrect way, or you're like, oh, I just need to figure out how to use the system, or like you never have the thought, actually maybe the system's just not for me. You're like,
Yeah.
this system actually it's proving that I'm terrible and I can't do stuff. So
Hmm.
you kind of you're trying to stick with it to the point where you're like, actually this isn't useful for me and I need to drop it. Not sure if I've expressed that super coherently,
No,
but
no, no,
hopefully that makes sense.
definitely. And I think social media wise as well, like the kind of culture of productivity and stuff makes it feel like that same stuff should work for you. But actually, if your brain is just wired differently, like it feels rubbish when something doesn't work for you. So I totally get it.
Yeah,
It is
definitely.
frustrating. Um, and I know you mentioned that you were 22 when you got your ADHD diagnosis.
Yeah, 22, maybe
So
23 actually, I think. Now I'm
okay.
thinking about it. Yeah, 22, 23. Time is hard when you're in your 30s.
Yes,
Nothing is
agreed.
nothing is real.
Yeah, I have no concept of like when I was at uni, and like trying to work backwards is insane. So I'm with you on the whole maths of it.
Yeah. There's someone at home listening that's like, I am over twice your age and you just gotta wait.
Exactly. So 22, 23-ish. And so you were at uni at the time. Did you tell anyone at the uni or kind of friend group wise? And if not, kind of, did you, when you went kind of, I know you went back after a foundation degree to do another degree, how can you kind of explain, did you kind of decide to
Yeah.
go up front with your diagnosis basically?
Yeah, so I have a slightly convoluted university timeline, so forgive me. But yeah, did an art foundation. So that's a 1 year course where you just do loads of different areas of art, and then you decide what you're going to specialize in, and then you go off and do a degree. I actually, because I was at like Camberwell for my art foundation, and I decided I wanted
Okay.
to do illustration. And I remember at the time, this was pre-diagnosis, I was like, oh, but I'm really bad at like sticking to long projects and stuff, so I should do something like that has a bit of a kind of a harder deadline, so I have motivation to work. So I went for the FDA, which is a 2-year degree, rather than the BA, the full BA. So the
Mhm.
idea in my head, I was like, if you do the FDA, you have to then bridge onto the BA, so you have to do well by the end of it to get on and do your final year. So I was like, oh, there'll be a deadline sooner, so that's going to be helpful. Spoiler, it wasn't. I like barely passed. It was pretty bad. So then I had like a year out, which I was kind of doing little bits of like working, being a bit like, oh, I don't know, like what's going on. And then eventually I had like a really nice temp job in like the university library office, but it was coming to an end naturally at the end of August. So I figured I would then, I was like, kind of seems like aligning in terms of like maybe going back to university. So I'd
Mhm.
applied to a few different ones, and then I wound up joining the second year BA illustration at Hertfordshire. I had like, I was really really lucky in that there were fantastic tutors on that course. Shout out to Tom and Kathy if you are by any chance listening. If not, like big love to you psychically. But like they were amazing, and I was chatting to them actually pre-diagnosis. I was like, I was already doing, I think, a lot better at that point because I'd had a full-time job in between university, and I think that was really helpful for like being like, this is actually how much time I have in a day. And also I went back to the second time, I was like, I have to just do this, not do any of the fun stuff. And I was making myself go in every single day, and that was helpful.
Mhm.
Um, but I was like, I think there's still something a little bit missing, so I'm gonna go try and get this diagnosis. So they actually knew beforehand. So yeah, it was straight away. Like afterwards, I was pretty like open about it. I think a lot of people in my life were not particularly surprised when I was diagnosed.
It's always annoying that, isn't it? You're like, "Oh, I went through this
Yeah.
whole process and you kinda had an inkling? Fine."
Yeah, you're just like, oh, that's great. Maybe I could have like gone in with like a folder and like been like, yeah, these are all of the people that think I should be diagnosed, rather than like, having to go through like my entire mental health history with a stranger, which is always a bit
Yes.
like,
Yes.
okay. But yeah, like, so I was always, yeah, pretty public. And I think particularly more earlier on in my diagnosis, I made like some illustration work actually on International Women's Day around ADHD, and that started a long chain of events, which I can also go into, which eventually led me to actually landing the book cover job. So it's
Ooh,
just like a
okay.
series of big chains.
Excellent. That's really interesting though, because yeah, that's definitely my next question is kind of after uni, how did you get into the kind of, illustration thing? Because obviously you studied it, so you
Yeah.
were keen to some extent to hopefully go into a kind of role within it. And like how easy or how hard is it to get into illustration once out of uni?
It is tricky, and it's also like, I feel like my story is kind of sort of a common one in a way of like, it's always a really weird chain of events. So I think my advice to anyone like listening, I guess, if I'm qualified to give it, would be to just kind of do the work that you like, and try and do a lot of it, and really, I guess, get it out there in a way, because you never know what people are going to pick up. I think,
Mm.
even stuff like, I don't do particularly a lot of fan art. She says, having just literally posted some Severance fan art, but like,
I did see that. It's cool. It's cool.
but like that, I think with actually, I've heard so many stories of people being picked up because of fan work, because it's like a cross media thing. So,
Mm.
that, and also it's really good to as well collaborate with people that are across your level that are doing things that are like interesting. I think that's because it's like with free work, I would never recommend like doing it particularly with like bigger companies. But when it's like you're like an you know, starting out as an illustrator, and then your friend is like writing a short story, and they're gonna like do it like a little
Yeah.
Substack or something, and you're like,
Mhm.
oh, I'll do a little picture. And particularly as long as they like really respect your work and your process, I think that's something that can be really, really fun. And particularly if it's projects, I would only suggest doing that for projects that really like set you on fire. But that kind of stuff I think is good. The story in terms of like how I got the book cover job,
Yes.
which is a really interesting one. I think maybe it's useful just to kind of showcase how convoluted sometimes this is and how random.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd posted for like International Women's Day, this, like I was saying, this post about like ADHD. Unbeknownst to me, someone that was following me at the time was I think Emma Case, who was she was compiling a list of like creative neurodivergent women, and was basically making a top 100. And she commented on it, and she was like, "Oh, this is really cool. I didn't realize you had ADHD. I'm doing this list. Would you like to be on it?" So she compiled that list. It wound up in a few places, and then it was on the Dots, which is like, if people don't know,
Yeah.
that's like a creative networking job site thing, like
Mhm.
LinkedIn for creatives, basically.
That's a good
Um,
description of it, actually. Yeah.
yeah, I think that kind of yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much sums it up. And that was posted on there. And then when it came to Al's book, Marseille, who was working as the creative director, I believe, at the time, at night sort of, was looking for like neurodivergent illustrators, and I think they might have literally put neurodivergent illustrator into the Dots. That article came up, and they saw one of my pieces that I'd actually done for at university, which was like, we did like a big project that was like A to Z, and I did it of like witches. So I had
Ah.
like my C witch was a candle witch, so it was like a witch wearing like a candelabra kind of thing. And it was very like, it was that kind of risograph inspired work that I really like, which is a type of printing, which is basically when you have two colors overlapping and overlaying. She
Mhm.
saw that, sent me a message. I think the interesting thing as well, if you're an illustrator on the receiving end of like inquiries and stuff, you get a lot of them, and there's a point where in the process where you're like, oh, I've just got this job, and it's like right before the contract's going to come through, and it just falls apart. That happens a lot, like,
Mm.
and that's just kind of one of those things. I tend to not feel like I'm now at the point where, and for like the past few years, if I haven't signed a contract, mentally in my head the job doesn't exist. I think because it's a real
Yeah.
bummer the first time that happens to you, or the first few times.
Mhm.
Eventually you are just like, okay. And it's like that for like quite a few creative fields. I've heard similar things for people that do like acting and getting to casting things, and a lot of jobs, you know, there's not like always a prize for second place.
Mhm.
But it's, yeah, so I had this email, and they were like, oh, do you want to come down to, I think, Roundtable Books, because it was still when Nights Of was kind of at the back of that little shop in Brixton that
Mhm.
they kind of do a lot of work with. And I remember coming down and chatting to them. And in my head, because I'd had these experiences before, I was like, oh, this is kind of exciting. I think this might have been slightly just after I'd said yes to it. I can't remember. I remember being like, in my head, I was like, oh, they've got 5 other illustrators on the line. You know, I'm really excited because it's conceptually, it seems like really good. I remember the brief really jumping out of me when I first got it. And I was always someone that was like, I don't know if my work is suited to like kind of middle grade books. But then I saw it and I was like, well, I have to do this. Like,
Mhm.
there wasn't like a single question in my like head about it. So I was like, oh, I
Mhm.
really hope they pick me. But I was like, there's probably like loads of other people. And I remember I met, think must have been where I met Marseille then. I think I might have met Aisha, the editor, as well at that point. I just remember, I think it was Marseille that said to me, we're so glad you said yes. We didn't have anyone else in mind. We couldn't imagine anyone else doing this. And I was just
Oh.
like, that's really nice. And then also like, oh, I could have asked for more money.
You're like, damn it.
But like, but you know, I was like, oh, that was so lovely. They'd actually like use kind of one of mine as like older illustrations, just as like a potential
Mhm.
mock-up thing. And then obviously I did the kind of spark cover, because that was
Which
that.
is very witchy as well. So I can
Yeah,
see how the crossover of them seeing your work was like, ooh.
yeah, totally, because it was a little witch that they'd like picked up. I think it actually might have even been like sketch like work for that project, not even the final thing. But
Okay.
it was, yeah, so that's the other thing of like, you don't know where, I guess, to bring it back for advice to illustrators, you don't know where like something that you like is going to wind up. You might be like,
Mm.
oh, I really love mushrooms, for example, so I'm going to draw loads of mushrooms, and then someone looks at you and they're like, oh, that person can draw food, they can do my cookbook or something.
Yeah.
Like it's often like weird little splinters. So if you kind of go a little bit towards what you love, you'll be kind of,
Mm.
hopefully stuff will come back to you a little bit. But yeah, the kind of spark cover, it was such a fun like brief to work on. And like obviously Elle's an immensely talented writer. I remember reading the first draft of it because interestingly, you don't have to read the books if you're a book cover illustrator, which is kind of wild. Like sometimes you can just be offered like a synopsis. I think I would always, if it's possible, I would always like to read like at least the first draft.
Yeah.
Because it feels kind of strange to me, but also I appreciate if you're a book color artist that's doing a lot of them, you're going to be
Mm.
like churning out a few per week, and maybe it's not feasible. um but yeah, I do remember it was at the time as well. I remember reading the first draft, and lots of people were like, because when you tell people like book cover, like, you know, you're doing this book cover, everyone was like to me, oh, is the book good, like, you know, do you know if it's good or not? And I remember being like, well, I'm not in the age range where this book is aimed, so like I feel like, you know, if it's a middle grade book, ultimately it is like, you know, if you're 12, you get to decide if it's good or not. But I was like, all I know is this book made me absolutely sob, like in like just completely like cried. So I was like, I think it's probably pretty good if that happened. So I was like, you know, I read a lot when I was younger and stuff, but I'm like, you know, I'm not like a book critic or anything. So I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I really vibe with it, and I think it's really meaningful, and I can see how this is gonna really impact people, like, or
Yeah.
like I, you know, or like I hope it does, and I'm glad something like this is getting made. And then it just performed so wonderfully well. It was like
Yeah.
so wonderful to see how well received it was.
Yeah. It's so interesting to hear about your process as well, because especially to any other kind of illustrators out there, if you can, draw things that you love and are passionate about and create, start to kind of build up that sort of portfolio of images, even if it's on somewhere like Instagram, you don't know who's going to pick up your stuff, who needs, that kind of niche sort of, style, and developing and sticking kind of to your own style as well. I feel like I can recognize your work without your name by it.
That's
I
good to
I
hear.
know, yeah, like, and that is, I feel like, the ultimate kind of compliment as anyone kind of creative, that your art is recognized by just its style and just how bold your work is, especially in a bookshop. I feel like I can be a mile away and spot an L book
Yeah,
because of you. Just
yeah.
your color palettes are beautiful,
Oh, thank you.
just saying.
That's really really kind. I love bright colors. They're really fun as well, because often sometimes the color palettes are ones that I've come up with. Sometimes as well, often I work with the graphic designer or the creative director, whoever Nights of have at the time, and they've also like suggested color palettes, and we've done like different options with them. So that's a really fun process. I think that I can't remember which one it was. It might have been Show Us Who You Are, where I think actually Elle got to decide, because we were going in between two different ones.
Mhm.
I think I'm allowed to say this. I'm sorry if like Nights Of is like, you're revealing too many secrets, but I think because the like the blue and purple one was one that Marseille had come up with, and then what I was using, which was kind of like this teal and orange cover, we eventually used in I think Knights of eventually used it for the special edition, a kind of spark in
Yes.
Waterstones. So there's like a lot of stuff that, you know, sometimes like the color palette I originally use isn't the one we go for, but then it gets like kind of banked for like another thing. So that's a really fun process. But it's, yeah, I think as long as it's bright and eye-catching. I think as well, like, I didn't think about it at the time when I made the kind of spark cover. That was a real, I kind of hate that, I hate that this is the way it turned out. That was such a like strike of inspiration moment. Like, I had that cover image in my head when I was reading the book. It really like beamed down into my brain, which is not a great
Wow.
thing to like say to creatives, because it would be
I
useful
get
if I
that,
give
but
you more.
also that, that shows something about, how your brain works and that you're kind of, piecing it together as you read. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. Something, there was something really, I think, interesting to me about like um the hair and everything kind of being stuck in it, because it's like having all of these like thoughts and racing things going through, like yeah, just like, I guess like I think it's like the description of like, yeah, like the autistic like mind and how things were being processed and stuff. That was really like something I was like, I'm really like, kind of even seeing some of myself in it as well, and like just being
Mm.
like, it, so there was something I think really good about that, like that I got really hooked on, of like seeing this big massive like hair for Addie, and like having all of the things that she really loved in it,
Mhm.
which, it just all made sense to me very quickly. And I think I remember I gave them 3 ideas, but I was kind of like, I think you should go with this one.
You always put in like two others to just be like, here's a range, but really, I need you to go for
Yeah.
this one.
Oh, this is a legitimate illustration tip. Please don't ever put in an idea that you absolutely hate to a client, because like, can I say Sod's Law? Is that allowed on this podcast?
Sure.
Yeah, Sod's Law
Why not?
is, that's the one they're gonna pick.
Hmm.
But
And
yeah,
you'll see it everywhere then, like after, and be like, oh, that was my
yeah,
least favorite.
yeah. Fortunately, it's never happened to me, but also I really try and make sure that I'm not super disappointed with ideas. I actually think the kind of spark one might have been the only time I've ever submitted ideas where I was like, I'd be really gutted if they don't pick this one. But yeah, like that was just, yeah, it was, it kind of, everything sort of came together really, really
Yeah,
well. So yeah.
that's so cool. And definitely kind of, not to sound cheesy, but inspiring that, these sort of opportunities can come from so many different avenues. Like, you don't have to be one of these, kind of Instagram accounts with 200K followers to be, approached for lots of different types of work, really. Like,
Oh,
it's
totally
about
not.
you and your style.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's like, I know people like as well in the industry that are more successful than me, that have like way less of an online presence, and then people conversely that have like significantly more followers, but their work's kind of different, so they've not got as much commercial stuff, or that's not the road that they're choosing. So
mhm.
it's very, yeah, it's very that like Lady Gaga quote that's like, there could be 100 people in the room kind of thing, but you really do only need one person. I
Yeah.
think it's kind of good as well, at the moment of, I'm trying to see over the next few years, if I can get out and do more stuff in person. I actually always hate being like, I'm going to try and do this, because it means I almost certainly won't do it. So I'm going to hope I haven't just jinxed myself. But I think that's also another really good way of like, if you're kind of sick of like algorithmically driven stuff,
Mm.
try and do stuff in person, because then you are far away from it. Like, it's always really nice. I try and get to like Thought Bubble sometimes, which is like a comics and arts fair, and I try and do tables there. Um, so every so often I'm not there every year, but sometimes you can catch me there. And that's really great, because then it's like you just have people in person coming up to see your work and like buying stuff and then taking your like business card. So that's the other thing as well, is like, I think we tend to think now of like everything has to be online, and that's a great avenue and resource, but if that's not working for you, you can try and maybe shift your focus into going more in person.
Yeah, and I think also sometimes people are paying for you as well and your
Mm.
experience, but also, if you're someone that they really get on with and really gel with, like, they want to work with you kind of thing. So doing that
Oh,
in person
100%.
stuff is definitely, I can see, putting like a name to a face is really important.
Yeah. I
Um,
was literally just having this conversation with people yesterday of like, not yesterday, a couple of days ago, where it was like, talking about someone that had gotten like a really good illustration gig and had people that were like, wow, I can't believe like you got that and I didn't get that. And it's just like, firstly, oh my god, like how rude. Calm down. Also, if you're going around with that attitude of like, why isn't the world like kind of, you know, gifting me stuff when it's on
Mm,
that level of like, it's fair enough to be like, I'm frustrated because I'm not getting opportunities, I'm putting the work in. Fair enough. When you're
mm.
like kind of being snotty about it, is like, well, if you have that attitude, you're probably not a nice person to work with. Like
Yeah, you've got to be that, you know, fundamentally a nice person is a good start.
yes, definitely.
Also, just to pick up on something earlier, you said about people being more successful than you. I
Mm.
think you're successful. Do you think you're successful?
I mean,
Because
that's
you
such a
are.
weird. Do you know what? It's a really weird question because it kind of almost feels like how long is a piece of string?
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
you know, it is like I think the stuff with Ella's been like super cool. I'm kind of looking to at the moment like building up a bit more of my freelance stuff because I've had a bit of time over the past few years like off it when I was first in Nottingham because I was focusing way more on my day job and stuff and that was quite like learned a lot but like very like kind of, some of that was quite like high pressure at the time
Mhm.
and now I'm kind of like looking a bit more to like okay well what do I want to do like direction wise I think because ideally I'd want to be like this is something that I am full-time freelancing and I'm getting enough consistent clients in that this is just my job for the rest of my life. I'm not there yet. So for me, that's like the benchmark of success. But like you're
Mhm.
also totally right. And I always forget all of the time. I'm like, it is very cool that I can walk into like a Waterstones and I can see my work on the shelves.
Yeah.
Like that's actually mental. I just never think about it and that's not great. like um just like I have my lovely Elle book stack actually that I'm like staring at right now. But it is kind of crazy to think I could hop on a tram and get in there and like just
Yeah.
get the book. I think it is a weird thing with like creative industries. I think I think is it Gabrielle Dunn they're now going by, who used to forgive me if that's not the right name because I previously knew their dead name. But like who they used to work at he used to work at BuzzFeed and then had like a podcast called Bad with Money like ages ago. He wrote a really interesting article about working as a creative at BuzzFeed and in LA and the kind of weird kind of gap where you can do something creatively and be really well known for it, but then
Mm.
also be like still trying to figure out how you're going to use it all to financially like support you and like how you make it into like a full-time gig. I think
Okay.
that's a really kind of interesting thing because in my head I always have it as like the full-time job like
Yeah.
make success, which maybe actually is something I need to question and maybe be a bit like okay so where's that coming from,
Yeah.
you know, there's that like the best way to like think about it. But
Mhm.
just but then that's like I think true of a lot of creatives and like one of the terrible things as well about creative work is that it's you know kind of there's always something else that you can do on the horizon.
Oh, yeah.
um so actually no I think you're kind of right actually I need to like I'm having a bit of a reflection moment and being like I actually just need to like celebrate some of the good stuff that's happened and not worry too much about the big picture, just kind of
Yeah.
you know keep ticking along and doing stuff that makes me happy and that I care about and really lights me up.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I don't know if I'm being very cheesy and like
No,
super positive,
no.
but
But it's like I'm also terrible at recognizing my own like, you know, things that I have done well, and people will say you have done well there, and I'm like, like it's just the attention being on you almost. It's a bit like, it's easier to kind of worry about the next thing than it is to be like, I did a good thing.
yeah, totally. And then it's like
Yeah,
if you're always worried about the next thing,
yeah.
it's always going to be about the next thing. That's a real never ending.
It's such a neurodivergent problem as well. I feel like, and my brain's
yeah,
on to the next thing. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
I think maybe it's also like the thing of I don't know if you also have this as well. When I always find when I complete a project, often I feel relief of my primary as like my primary emotion because I'm like,
yes,
yes, I managed to get that done.
yeah.
I'm relieved. not like, oh my god, I did a good thing. I think I'm
Oh
really
no,
fortunate as
yeah.
well. I've got friends in my life that are a lot better now at reminding me. Like
Uh-huh.
my mate Ruby is fantastic at just being like, um actually that was a really cool thing that you did, and I know that you like 10 years ago would be like absolutely mind blown that you did that. So,
Mhm.
let's actually just celebrate it a bit rather than just like completely try and forget it next sentence and move on to
Yeah,
the next thing.
yeah, yeah. That's very true.
So yeah, if you can't do it yourself, you need to get someone else in to be your like
Yeah,
celebration buddy, and then you've got to do it for them as well.
yeah. I feel like everyone needs one of those. Just someone like a hype person to be like, "You're
Yeah,
doing great. Keep going."
totally, totally. We all need to be hyped.
Definitely helps. And very kind of nerdy question,
Mm.
potentially illustration wise. So, when you first kind of start out, do you work on paper? Do you work digitally? Do you have a favorite pencil, pen,
Ooh,
brands? Like,
yes, I
what
love
do you
this
love?
question.
The nerdy questions of like, what's your favorite pen? Like,
Yeah.
tell me.
So I guess process wise, I normally sketch traditionally. I am a pen sketcher. I really don't use a lot of pencil. I'd rather
Mhm.
make a really terrible pen drawing um and like have it scribbled in my sketchbook. Also, side note, because again, something I was talking about recently, my sketchbook is filled with terrible drawings that are not very aesthetic, and no one is seeing them apart from me, and that's fine because that's what a sketchbook is for. You do not have to
Yeah.
have a beautiful sketchbook. It is fine. Get the ideas out of your head onto the paper, because as the wise Tumblr post once said, if your art stays in your head, it will make you very sick. So you need to get it out somewhere.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I like to sketch on paper. I honestly like, I use a lot of like I just use kind of a lot of like um brush pens actually. So I have like some Tombow
Oh.
ones. I quite like Poscas as well. As another like just paint markers. They're more like solid straight lines, whereas Poscas you can kind of get a bit of not Poscas, Tombow you can get a bit of variation. Annoyingly, there is one pen that I use that I can visualize, and I cannot for the life of you tell you the brand. So I might have to send that to you in an email later, and we can put that in the show notes. But it's another super basic pen. I really
Mhm.
like. I've been really into Piff sketchbooks. So that's like PITH. I think you can get them. I think possibly from like the London Graphic Centre or like CasArt online. I think they're a brand based in Scotland, which is really nice. Just like
Mhm.
really good quality paper. I used to work in a printer, so that's important to me.
Yeah,
But
paper stock. Yeah, I get
yeah,
you.
lovely. It has to have a good feel. But yeah, so I'd say that's the end of the process. I like I sketch traditionally normally, and then at the moment, when I go for like a full render, I'm currently using Procreate, so that's on the
Mhm.
iPad. I just find that to be like really um, organic, and I guess like yeah, it's just nice. It's like because it's a step away from a sketchbook, but it's digital, which is really lovely. I have
Yeah.
previously worked with like a graphics tablet on a laptop, so one where you're like not looking at it and working on the screen. But
It
yeah, I
feels
also
weird, doesn't it? It feels so
yeah.
disjointed to do it like that.
Oh, totally. There's like there's a hand-eye coordination adjustment period, because you're
Mm.
like not looking at the page, you're looking at the screen. So it's like
Mhm.
expect that you're always two steps behind when you're using
Mm.
a tablet for the first time and like trying to pick it up. One thing I used to do actually, and maybe this is something I should do a little bit more of, is when I first started using really bright colors and doing overlays, what I'd actually do is I would draw out things in black, and I would use I forgot what the paper's called, but there's like a lot of animators use it. There's like a really thin paperweight paper that's slightly translucent,
So like
and
tracing paper sort of
yeah, a
feeling.
little bit
Yeah.
thicker than, but yeah, that's a good way to put it, like tracing paper equivalent.
Okay.
And I would draw out um each bit of the design in black. So, which is actually, if you know a bit about risograph printing, it's kind of, you can kind of see the link there a bit closer, because you print on masters and everything. Then each layer of color has to originally go in on like as a black scan. And then it gets
Okay.
printed onto the drum, and then the ink goes through that scan. if
Mhm.
that kind of makes a bit of sense.
No,
It's
no,
kind
that
of
makes
tricky
sense.
if you, yeah. So yeah, what I would then do is I would scan in. So say like if I was like drawing a person in blue and I wanted to make their hair pink, I would draw one layer where I'd just draw the person, and then on the next layer I would just draw the hair, and then I'd scan those in, and then I would put them through. I think I used to use Photoshop to do this. And I'd like basically change the colors in Photoshop of the black. So then I would digitally alter it. So there would be one layer blue, one layer pink, and then use multiply on the top layer, and then you get the
Mhm.
kind of color cross. So if you want to like, I've just told you how to like copy, like, you know, completely steal my style if you want to do it, but like that's fine. There you go. More power to the people, I guess. That's the knowledge. But yeah, so there's a few different ways that I've experimented with. But yeah, at the moment, I am kind of like married to my iPad for like rendering. It's really convenient and it's very fast. Like
Mm. And
in
you can draw
comparison.
like on your lap, which I feel is so much like sometimes you just want to sit somewhere comfy and draw rather than at a desk. I
Yeah,
don't know if you're like that.
totally, totally. I love to just be like sometimes like I'm really lucky in that I share a little studio art space with some of my mates.
Oh, cool.
And we've got like our each have a little desk in there, and there's also a big sofa, and like most of the time I'm working at the desk, and then occasionally I'm like, I'm gonna go sit on this sofa and curl up, especially if it's like, I don't know, I'm like, I am just like very, I think when you're very tired and you're like, okay, I really actually need to get this done, but I'm quite limited as to how much I can get, I can reasonably do. I think maybe trying to do this in the comfiest way possible
Yeah.
is the
It's
best way
just sitting
forward.
upright, I feel like if I can if you can kind of cozy up a bit, then I feel
Yeah.
like drawing under a blanket is the ultimate,
Mm-mm.
cozy way of doing it.
Definitely. Also, like drawing in a sitting position that you're like, oh, this is probably terrible for my posture, but
Yeah.
like, I guess we just have to be here right now.
I don't know if you've seen that meme of like it's like my back when I'm like at a desk or like drawing and it's just like this kind of like shrimp, just like it's so like bent over and I'm like, yes, I relate to that.
Honestly, like so bad. I feel like occasionally, like sometimes I like to do like yoga stuff, and like sometimes we'll do very relaxed, chill like yoga, to be honest. But like sometimes we'll do ones that really like stretch out your back, and then I'm like, wow, I feel like I've grown like 2 inches, like just been like pulled apart, which is probably not a great thing. Do like don't do as I say, not as I do. Have good posture, guys. I'm
The fact that
sure.
you're even, conscious of your posture is a good thing. I feel like as, anyone that works like on tablets or computers, I just feel like you just end up so hunched over if you're not careful. So the fact
Yes,
that you're
yeah,
aware of it
definitely.
is, half the battle, I think.
Yeah, this is unfortunately the trials of the modern world, right? We're all
Mm,
we're all little shrimps.
we're all little shrimps looking at screens. um, and I think my very last question for you is what would be either your next kind of dream illustration client or a kind of project that you'd love to have? So not necessarily client, like even kind of personal, like what what do you want to do next?
So I think actually, because I've been thinking a lot about where I want to take my work. This is arguably kind of like a sort of boring answer that leads to more interesting things. So I've been thinking more about getting actually into like branding stuff, just because my work is quite bold and eye catching,
Mm,
um, which super boring. But the more interesting thing, I think, like at the moment, my dream client would be like a music festival. So like I'd really
that'd be
like to
cool.
do kind of like some branding across like a whole festival, loads of illustration work and things. Because I don't know, I mean, I love going to festivals, and I've got like a day festival coming up this year after like not being to them for a few years, which is very exciting. um so yeah, I think that would be really cool. I think like music's super like important to me, so that would be anything as well in the music industry would be like a nice kind of alignment. And I'm like, I think hopefully like I can see in my head where I kind of want my work to go, the direction of it. So
Okay, that's good.
hopefully by the time this
Yeah.
episode is out, there'll be some stuff that screams a bit more festival, I think. But yeah, I think that's kind of
Yeah,
like
that's
my
cool.
dream next thing. I'd also be down to do like more book covers. I feel like it's really funny. When I was at uni, actually people were like, your work would be really good for like YA, so that would be kind of fun, I think.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
definitely.
I think possibly actually again a bit left field, maybe a cookbook, because I feel like when I walk into
Ooh.
like bookstores at the moment, if there's a thing with like a really interesting cover, it's normally a cookbook. But I'm also like one of those people of I don't know, some people are very into like writing down what they want and like as like quote unquote manifesting it. I'm more
Ah,
like
yes.
my brain I think can't conceptualize that. I feel like whatever good stuff that's happened to me in my life has been like so beyond what my like pea brain could have even thought of at the time. So I'm like, I don't want to limit myself to what I'm just like thinking of. I would really like to kind of I don't know, I'd love a project that maybe it's something I'd never even considered to like land in my lap, and I see it and I go, do you know what? That actually sounds really, really interesting. Like, and I want to
Yeah.
do that. That's really cool. So yeah, as long as I get to make really bold, like eye-catching stuff,
Mhm.
and I get like good creative freedom, I'm gonna be like a happy camper, I think.
Oh, that's see, you're open to all of the things pretty much, but I mean, even like you're saying the branding is boring. Like you're talking to a graphic designer here. I'm always gonna have a space in my heart for
Sorry.
branding. I'm
So
like,
just being like,
yes,
actually graphic design is trash. Your thing
yeah.
is trash, sorry. But
No, no,
I think
no.
from like an outside perspective, if you're like, oh yeah, advertising and branding, everyone's like,
Yeah.
okay, right, cool,
Everyone's like, oh, it's
capitalism.
commercial. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 I get
I'm
you.
like, it's like, I'm not a fan of capitalism, guys. I'm sorry. Like, trust me. I wanna design a nice music. Well, I wanna illustrate a nice music festival.
Yeah, honestly, my heart goes out to the like designers and illustrators who do the festival posters and have to get literally 150 names, like I don't know, Glastonbury, like all onto a
Yeah.
poster. Like how logistically a nightmare, but also how much fun. Like,
Yeah, gosh. Also, like that's I didn't even think of that because like often as an illustrator, you're handing stuff off to designers. I think one of the
mm,
biggest misconceptions I've had with the books is people be like, "Oh, did you do the text?" And it's like, "No, I don't touch that. That's someone else does that. It's another
mm,
person's job." I get told where it probably is going to go, so I need to make space for it. But that's it. So yeah, I think in my head I'm like, "Oh, I just get to draw loads of fun things," and like people like like being on stage and stuff, and then someone else can worry about putting all of the names on there.
yeah. Someone can fill in the black, like the blanks, literally.
Yeah, someone else can have that puzzle.
Yeah.
Sorry to the designers out there.
I think that's quite nice though. You're like, I'm done here. Over to you.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you've done your bit.
exactly.
And where can people find you on the internet? Where can they see your previous work and maybe future work as well?
So you can find me on most social media sites uh, at chaotic. So that's spelled KAYAOTIC. Did remember that all in one. There we go. So that's me on Instagram. I think the other places I'm most active is like Blue Sky as well. I think that's like same thing, .bluesky.social. But I think if you put me in, I'll come up as well. And then I've like my professional works all on kwilsonillustration.com is where you can find me as well, like my portfolio. But yeah, that's where I am. And then the books that I am on of like Elle's wonderful work can be found at Waterstones and all of your good local bookstores. She's a very good author. Sometimes I like to joke that there's just keyboard smashes in them, so people just like actually it's just all me on the cover, but it's definitely not. There's some wonderful, wonderful stories in them, and I'm just a small part of a very cool big
Oh,
phenomenon that's Elle's
that
work.
that's very selfless of you to say that you're just a small part of a big thing because really you make her books recognizable. I think like we know it's Elle because of you. So
Yeah, dream team.
yeah, if you want to quote that anywhere,
Hopefully she would agree. I feel like she would. She's a very big champion of my
yeah.
work, and I've always really appreciated that.
Oh, that's lovely. And I'll also try and link to the article that you mentioned as well, because I think that'd be quite interesting about, I think you were saying about the person that worked at BuzzFeed.
Yes, I can dig that out for you. That is a
Oh,
very
that'd be amazing.
interesting, yes, read as well, which I think is kind of good to, I think both creatives and non-creatives to like read about. It's definitely something that's more common now as well with influencer phenomenons of being like quite recognizable, but maybe
Mhm.
being like, I'm still figuring out how I make this into a career kind of vibe.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, amazing. I will put all of those things in the show notes. And I will also obviously link to some booksellers as well. Um, yeah, especially like I love how like I feel like Elle and her team are very kind of good at talking about the independent bookstores. And I know that you've also, I think you did like a kind of like window kind of
Yes,
mural sort of thing that's looked really cool.
I've done a window for roundtable books. I'd be open to doing more as well if independent booksellers are hearing this. I
Mm,
think, unfortunately, you'll have to forgive me because there was a point when I like first moved to Nottingham where a few of those conversations were sort of vaguely being suggested, and I was just like, I've got to deal with my life here now. So I was also off medication at that point, but I am back on it now. Thumbs up. But yeah,
you're
so I'm
like,
a little
I'm
bit better
back.
at dealing with these kind of things, guys.
Thing
Trust
is, it's
me.
a lot to settle somewhere new and also have people contacting you to do stuff. It's like, okay.
Yeah. There was a
Um,
little bit of time where I was like, I've got to like, get my kind of life together and stuff here and like
yeah.
figure out some stuff. And then yeah. But now I
Oh,
am back.
that's good. I'm glad you're settled and you have your own little like art studio that you share. That sounds lovely.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Like 2 thumbs up. Love the gang. So good.
Well, thank you so much for being keen to come on this podcast. It's really, really great to hear from you.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun. I always just hope I've been coherent. So fingers crossed.